Hi, good afternoon. I'm Angela Littlejohn, and this is Jeremy Hall. Jeremy and I have both spent a good part of sort of 25 to probably 30 years in the screen industry, both in live action and animation and visual effects, combined. I've done the most of my work has been in live action, and probably most of Jeremy's has been in the visual effects and animation space. But together we've, been at Pukeko. I've been here for 4 years. Jeremy's been working with us in Beijing for the last 6 months and has now joined us here in New Zealand. So this is the story of Pukeko. Pukeko Pictures was created in 2008 by Richard Taylor, Martin Bainton and Tanya Rogers, and we're part of the Weta Group here, which you'll see is all based in Miramar, the Miramar Peninsula, which houses a lot of the Weta Group, which includes Weta Workshop, Portsmouth Entertainment, Park Road Post, and the famous Weta Digital and Stone Street Studios. In and amongst everybody, this little world in Pukeko, there are a lot of other companies as well that we work with, creating, world-class film facilities, and also filmmakers and service providers, both locally and internationally. That's us up there. Richard, you will see, and the team of Pukeko Pictures, including we do Thunderbirds, and we're doing a production called Cadets. There was supposed to be a little video, but I'll get to that. At Pukeko, we're an independent production company. We develop IP, and we develop it with a number of storytellers and a number of writers and creators, and we work with, we develop and we create and we produce world-class multi-platform entertainment for the global audience. This is mainly in the form of TV production. We have made various TV series that have been shown over 100 territories in the world, around the world. The video's gone. 5, 4. Sorry. I'll get back on cue. Sorry about that. How embarrassing. Gosh, sorry, that threw me because that was supposed to start first. Jeremy's going to talk about these our three main strategies for sustainable growth. And the first one is developing and producing multi-platform IP and commercialisation through the expansion of IP. The second one is using groundbreaking digital technology and that gives us a strong international reputation and a point of difference. And the third one is forming key international partnerships. And this assists us with global opportunities. And with such partnerships comes long-term investment and sustainable growth for our company. And Jeremy's going to talk a little bit about all of that.
So we develop our IP for multiple platforms. This means that it goes on to screen content, it's gaming, it's consumer products, it's live entertainment, and obviously most recently we have augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. The IP model for kids content for us is about keeping a renewable audience and keeping the audience engaged in our IP brand. This means that at the creative development stage, we have to consider all these different channels. And we take that consideration at the point of when we're actually designing and developing the IP and what that actually means to go on to transfer to these different platforms. And of course, we take ownership in that IP across those different channels. And what that means is that the company, we are able to participate in the long-term life and the financial returns of that IP in those channels. This gives us a long life viewpoint from the work that we do. So, of course, we can't do all that without developing new technology. For our first series, Jane and the Dragon, we developed a new motion capture system that allowed us to deliver a new aesthetic for a show, and that allowed us to sell in multiple territories. Jane and the Dragon now is out onto 25 different territories. For the What-What's, we were able to solidify a worldwide reputation for mixed media. We were able to take that mixed media knowledge and apply it to the Thunderbirds Are Go. Thunderbirds Are Go is a co-production with ITV Studios, and it is, of course, developed on the classic series by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson. We use models and digital CG creations. We mix all that together, and it gives us a nice sort of refresh of the brand while still paying homage to the original series. And our latest show, Cadets, again, is actually a development from the What-What's, which allows us to build a much bigger ecosystem by developing two brands for multiple age groups. And we are going to be very excited with this series that gets launched later this year. Of course, we can't do that without our partners. And Andrew, I think you're going to talk a little bit about that.
So this slide just demonstrates a lot of the partnerships that we and the people we've been working with over the years since Pukeko has been evolved. And our main partners have been people like ITV in London. We've got the ABC in Australia. We've partnered with Goalpost Pictures in Australia, Nelvana in Canada, and more recently we have partnered with Shambhala Kids in Beijing and Guangzhou, and they're the partnership that we're doing with Cadets with. So just a little bit about Cadets is the latest production that we're doing at the moment, which has culminated on a 2-year relationship building with China. And with China, as you well know, it needs a lot of relationship building. And Richard Taylor has spent about 17 years going back and forth from China and forming relationships. And that culminated in 2 years ago, well, it's now probably 3 years ago, meeting the Shambhala Kids and starting a relationship whereby we've got a 52 11-minute 3D animation, which has been developed here in New Zealand, and all the stories are written here, the director's written here, the design, all the pre-visualization is done here, and then it goes to China to be animated, and comes back here and is post-produced at Park Road Post. So that is, we've delivered our first 26 episodes, and as an extension to what else we're doing with the TV show, we're also in parallel developing an extensive global licensing and merchandising plan. We've got into, we're developing location-based experience in the location-based experience and family entertainment centres within China, which we would like also to, if successful, we will bring that back to the rest of the world and in New Zealand. We're rolling out 2 playlands, cadet lands, in China later this year. And we have also got various other apps, games, various other things that we are doing so that the whole IP utilisation and exploitation is 360 degrees. And within that, the partnership the investment is coming from China, as well as the New Zealand Screen Production Grant, and investment from we invest ourselves as well. And the financial returns and the IP ownership is shared between us and our Chinese partner. We've just launched the second series, and we're looking at another series at the moment with them, which is another partnership with Canada, China and New Zealand, which is it's a lot of hard work, but it's a culmination of 2 years of relationship building, and it's our foray into China. I think that more or less gives you an overview of who we are at Pukeko Pictures and the number of ways that we're engaging and to commercialise our IP. And I think that we'll just get onto the panel.
Thank you very much. What we're going to do now is I've got 3 questions that I'd like to pose to 3 groups within this panel. Trust me, there's a narrative arc here, which is a kind of discussion process. But what I wanted to begin with, and I'm going to ask Stephen and Sam this question first, and it's really about the fact that there isn't, it would have to be said, likely to be very much that's new under the sun. So it would be quite useful for us and the audience to understand what you've seen has really worked. What have been the ways in which businesses with good solid IP have been able to manage commercial success?
Shall I go first?
Sure.
So many years ago, I set out on my world of licensing and distribution, selling Shortland Street around the world. So I'm really giving my age away here. And probably one of the either lowlights or highlights was going back to John Barnett to say, look, we've sold Shortland Street in Albania or something, and showing it dubbed. But they were interesting days, those early times. And to fast forward, when you look at 360 properties and the idea of how do we commercialise this and what that means, creativity, I think, and innovation in of itself doesn't necessarily kind of lead to riches. Riches lead to riches. Capital investment leads to riches. And I think Angela made the very good point is leveraging partnerships, which is so important. So good examples, both in tech media. I work in tech media now. I work with a lot of US companies aligning kind of content to automated production processes. Kaha, which is a production management tool some of you may know about. We're working with that very, very closely. So the idea of commercialising that is built within the DNA at the outset. And I think the idea of how do you commercialise, how do you make kind of innovation and creativity worth money is a quite a convoluted process, but it does require here in New Zealand, we have bucket loads of creativity. But we have a very strange financing investment system here. And I think we need to get very real about how we support our talented innovators, founders, CEOs, animators, designers. It's all very well to do very good R&D. It's all very well to produce great VR product, the Green Fairy, something I've invested in, I'm very, very proud of. But you've got to figure out how do you take that out into the world. Are we really going to be good enough? When you go into the US, and I have to say, my experience is very much in the US. When you go into the US, you've got to know exactly your market. And when it comes to marketing, I think we're less ninja and more turtle, if I can say that. And I think it's incredibly important that here we really support by way of investment. Michael's organisation, NZTE, Callaghan, they're all doing such an excellent job of making sure that IP and New Zealand startups and companies can go offshore. But are we doing enough work ourselves to make sure that we know What's the area that we're going into? What solution are we fulfilling? Do we know our personas properly? Who are our customers? And are we really writing and directing and producing and providing something to them that is going to commercialise itself? But there are a lot of examples of that. Page Proof is a review software which takes the pain out of reviewing presentations and video and things. They're doing very, very well. I mean, their revenue has increased by about 700% due to just customer review alone.
So the underlying principle of that is the proper preparation, professionalism,
Yes.
a real approach that says we're not just going out there and number 8 wire trying our best.
And I don't think we do that, but you're quite right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stephen?
Yeah. So we need to avoid the woolly thinking that creative people get accused of, but actually isn't the reality. So we need to be more ninja, not turtle. And so in my realm of video games, what we do well is analytics. So let's actually use use technology to help us solve creative decisions. So it's it's not risky, but there's uncertainty that you manage during the production and creating your IP during that marathon, not a sprint. And you might be having arguments in the writing room or with your producers and developers. And you solve those decisions and you become ninjas with the laser point focus on who your audience is and what they value, which is what you will monetize, by, say, analytics and figuring and measuring things, or even creating in your product a test that you then get the data on. And so, for instance, you may be wildly surprised what your customers actually value. So New Zealand's biggest video game is a thing called Path of Exile. It's a Dungeons and Dragons style game. They don't sell magic swords. The entire content of the game is available for free. The thing that earns them the most money is storage. A bigger bag to store your magic items in.
Really? A bigger bag to store your...
And once they have that
bag to store my...
Once they have that insight, they engineered everything in the experience to support that. You can collect lots of swords, but if you collect this extra thing, you can even customize in the game the levels of the game and the world. You collect the world in order to fill up the storage pack. And so it's just similarly, it's looking into your analytics will let you really identify what the value in the eyes of the customer might be. And it's not always content. It could be services or the extended IP as well.
Thank you, Stephen. That's excellent. What you can't see is there's a clock down here telling me I've got very little time left. So I'm going to ignore that. So on the upside is the things, what is that they've illustrated around this is how you make sure this works really well. Can I ask, Angela, you and Jeremy, the question, what have been the mistakes that you have made in the success journey that you've had that might be interesting for us to hear about?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
With direct reference, I think, to China, and Jeremy can talk more about it, is believing that they think the way you think, because that is one of the biggest things that we've had to learn is actually, although we had spent 2 years developing this relationship, when we think that they can take what we've learned and actually apply it to their culture and how they do things, you've really got to understand that they do things really, really differently. So do your homework and respect those cultural differences and spend time with them, and sort of you really need to embed yourself into the way that they think.
So no assumptions.
No assumptions.
No, yeah, I think that's correct. And the analytics is interesting because I think that one of the biggest mistakes I see time and time again is people trying to take their IP and they just assume that it's going to work in a foreign market, and inevitably it doesn't because of differences in culture or differences in ways that the society work. And I can't underline the value of spending the effort and the time to research those foreign markets, to research what's happening globally, to research what the trends are. This is where analytics becomes interesting and important, to learn the most about what's going on outside your bubble, and bringing all that knowledge back into the IP development when you're actually developing that IP. this consumer products, just because you design a great character doesn't mean that character is actually going to work effectively as a toy. And time again, I see design that is not taking that into consideration, and you completely annihilate a very profitable market for yourself. So I think it is very important to do your homework, and hard work will always pay off, as hard as it is.
Thanks, Jeremy. My final question, which I'm going to direct to Minister Parker, and can I say thank you very much, David, can I thank you very much for being here today. The signal that is sent by the fact that government is interested in this conversation is very important, so we really do appreciate that. And to Christine, is the question of partnerships, and where in this kind of sphere are you seeing partnerships working particularly well?
Well, everywhere actually. I love the creativity of the arts. I love the creativity of business. I actually love the creativity of politics too, actually. And in terms of the points made in respect of IP, I absolutely agree with. I did the due diligence of A2 Corporation, Science and the IP, and I was one of its first 2 employees and was an entrepreneur in these new innovation sectors, and so I believe I have some understanding to bring to my current role. Every one of these things relies upon a point of comparative advantage, and it's the simplest proposition in economics that if you want to have something that someone else is going to buy, you've actually got to have a point of comparative advantage that holds you apart. Sometimes that's through IP, sometimes it's through creativity. It's fantastic when it's the blend of those two, and it can be so fun to bring that creativity together with an intellectual property position. Then how do you make more of it? Well, I think, sorry, I've forgotten your name. Sam said you've got to apply money to it. So you've actually got to apply capital, financial capital and human capital, and partnerships with other, and then you've got to de-risk it. So partnerships like you run through the Beachheads program, they de-risk things. Peer support de-risks things. Partnership with capital providers provide capital. Partnerships with distribution channels de-risk and provide opportunity. Partnerships with government sometimes enable things that would not otherwise happen, whether it's through the Beachhead program that's supported by government, or it's through the Screen Production Grant, or it's through tax signals that discourage people investing ever larger amounts of money in rental investments in Auckland, driving house prices higher, the opportunity cost of which is capital investment in the creative sectors or the export sectors that will grow our wealth. So, I think, whether it's partnerships through free trade agreements, China free trade agreements, part of the reason why you're able to do that business in China, partnerships, and it leads to the spawning of all of these spillover companies that as the success breeds success, because you've got more human capital following the money, and some of that embarks upon its own creative exercises, and the whole thing snowballs as it has in Wellington.
Thank you. Actually, the context of partnerships has to be full. Partnerships are genuine engagements between 2 entities or more than one entity. Partnerships aren't just saying, we want this from you. And that point is well made. They're quite broad. Christine?
So, I guess the UK in many ways is an exemplar of really good partnership between the creative industry sector and government, and actually wider industry per se. The creative industry strategies, we do have one, and have had one for many years. Strapline is cross-industry collaboration, and it means not just cross-industry within the creative and now also the tech sectors, but it means cross-industry collaboration with retail, with automotive, with manufacturing sectors, aerospace, and for people to recognise the fact that the creative industry is an industry and it does make money. In the UK, the sector contributes £10.5 million an hour to the economy. It's the fastest growing sector of the economy. So it's taken us a long while to get recognised, but now that we have that recognition, we're working very closely with government, not just to be demanding and always, give me some money. That's not really what it's about. It is about a genuine partnership where government's role is to provide a safe framework within which the sector can thrive. And that means education, intellectual property, access to broadband. I mean, it means all sorts of things. But having that dialogue with government is super important and has been key to our growth.